Welcome to the 20th anniversary of the Lone Pine Film Festival. We're doing something different this year, and we're having one-on-one interviews that we're taping, and my very first guest is Geri Jewell. Now, you were doing episodic TV and all, and I know that you have cerebral palsy, and you were the first one that was really hired to do episodic TV. How did that come about, Geri?
I was the first person with a disability ever to be cast in a primetime series, so
Wow.
I am a pioneer in that way. I started doing stand-up comedy in 1978, and very shortly after, I was discovered by Norman Lear. And Norman Lear cast me in The Facts of Life. So that was the beginning of my career. And actually, technically, I did one other show before Fact of Life that gets no publicity. And it was a show called The Righteous Apples on PBS. And I did one episode, and I was written in as a girlfriend of a punk rocker, and he took me home to meet his parents. And his parents were really upset, not because I had cerebral palsy, but because I wasn't Jewish. and
Great
that was the first one, even before Facts of Life. And it was just one-shot deal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, you worked with Cheech and Chong?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that had
How
to be
did you
a
know
crazy
that?
set, because I did my homework.
Oh my! Yes, I did. And I have film credit, and it actually got me my Screen Actors Guild card into the union, but I was cut out. I worked on it for 3 weeks, and I think like 3 days before the end of my time, I fell off the back of a truck.
Oh my.
Yeah, leave it to me. I mean, it was no big deal. All I did was sprain a few fingers, my wrist. No, nothing major. But they couldn't match the master shots that I had filmed previously, so bye-bye.
Oh.
But you know what? No. I don't believe there are any accidents in life.
Oh.
I never have believed that. And I believe that it was meant for me to fall off the truck and screw up my hand. Because had I stayed in the Cheech and Chong film, the Facts of Life producers would have been very upset.
Ah.
So it was meant to be.
That's a great way to look at it. And so often, with show business, as other things
Yes.
do, I mean, it's that type of thing that happens that gets you a bigger break and all. I mean, it's so wild how those things happen. How did you come to be in Deadwood?
That was another freaky deal. In '99, I had spinal cord surgery from C1 to C7. My neck is now 45% titanium.
My dad had that done too.
Yeah, did he use his neck as collateral because it's really an expensive neck now.
I don't think he thought of that.
Can I have a loan? You can use my neck as collateral. No, but what I'm doing for chronic pain from '99 on is I get shots of Botox in my neck, back, and shoulders for chronic pain. A lot of people don't know that Botox was invented for chronic pain.
No.
That was the initial use for it. And in 2002, I was standing in line at this yuppie, buppy pharmacy in Santa Monica, there to pick up my Botox, and this man turns around, he says, "Are you Geri Jewell?" I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm a big fan of yours." And I said, "Well, thank you. No, I love your career." And I said, "You've inspired me." And I said, "Well, thank you, sir." And he said, "I haven't seen you on TV in a long time. What are you doing these days?" And I said, "Oh, you mean besides Botox?" Not a lot right now. I didn't want to tell him, well, I'm recovering from surgery, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he said, "You want a television series?" I said, what?
Of course not.
You want a television series? I said, look, just because I'm in a pharmacy, it doesn't mean I'm totally screwed up. Don't play with my mind. He said, I'm not. In case you don't recognize me, my name is David Milch. NYPD Blue David Milch? He said, yes. And I said, well, Mr. Milch, I'm flattered that you love my work, but let's get realistic. I wouldn't make a real good cop. He said, no. I just got a contract with HBO. I'm doing a new Western called Deadwood. You want to do a Western? Huh. And I looked up as far as my neck would allow me. And I said, God, you have a real quirky sense of humor. I mean, I'm standing here with cerebral palsy, a titanium neck, dependent on Botox, and Mr. Milch here wants me to ride a horse. But as always of my nature, I've always had a tendency to rise to the challenge. So that's how, and what a lot of people don't know is I was the first person cast, first role cast by Milch.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a great story.
It was a wonderful story, and I've been hanging out in that pharmacy ever since, waiting for another.
For another one. Oh, there's nothing like working with a stand-up comedian.
I know. Is she telling the truth?
Yeah, make a pretty good straight man. Did you ever have somebody that really mentored you or gave you acting advice that you credit, or is it something that just came more naturally for you?
I've always been funny, and I think that comes from compensation. It's like you spend your childhood not being embraced by society, kids not wanting to play with you, a lot of fear. Like, you know, you're alienated, you're isolated. And for me to break through that isolation and alienation, I realized early on that if I can get people to laugh, they forget about it. And wow, this is cool. This isn't a painful experience. And one of my role models was Cheryl Barnett.
Oh, great.
And I thought, you know, I discovered her at age, I mean, I didn't personally discover her, that's not what I meant. But I became, that's a better choice, I became aware of her at a young age, and I thought, wow, how neat that she makes fun of herself. But people are laughing with her, not at her.
Sure.
It's not a malicious humor or cruel humor. It's a humor that's full of love and healing. Mm-hmm. And I like that. And I started writing her when I was about 13, and she always wrote me back, and she said, don't quit. I told her I wanted to be a comedian, I want to be an actress, I want to be a writer, and I have cerebral palsy, what do you think? And she always told me that there was no guarantee that I'd become professional. She said there's no guarantees in life, period. The important thing is to put out the effort and to try. And I took that to heart.
Sure.
And I took Carol's words wherever I went.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love her work. I think everybody,
my God, yes.
You know. What was your favorite crew to work with?
Deadwood.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Oh my God, there's just no comparison. The cast and the crew were just the most phenomenal group of people that I have ever worked with.
Yeah, I only know a couple of them. Powers Booth.
Oh, I love
I've
Powers.
really gotten to like him very much. Nice man.
I got to pretty close to Ian McShane. And Ian McShane was just the most down-to-earth, lovely human being. And the reason, well, see, I didn't have any scenes with Powers Booth, so I never really got to work with him. But I worked with Ian a lot. And I'll never forget when we first started filming the second season, and he had a lot of lines where he was calling me names and treating me really bad. And every time the director would yell, cut, and we'd start over, Ian would come over and hug me and say, I'm so sorry. And I said, Ian, don't worry about it. I know it's not you. And Ian, whenever we had lunch, he would come and sit next to me. And if I was sitting by, you know, it was interesting. You know, like I said, and it's unconscious. Mm-hmm. It's like, as a kid, you unconsciously believe that nobody's going to want to socially interact with you. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to socially interact with others. It's like oh God, do I want to sit there at that table? It's a leftover from childhood. And Ian, I never talked to him about that, but he made every effort to include me in social activities outside of filming. I mean, made a conscious effort. And that was something that was so warmed my heart, endeared me to him, because he understood that without me telling him.
Yeah, that's really a special gift, people that have that. I know my mom was that way.
Oh my God, and he, no pretenses with him. I mean, he used to joke about my disability just as much as I did. And I loved it, and I respected him for it.
Now, you must have had well, not must have, but you probably had the opposite experience working on Facts of Life, just because kids they tend to be mean to each other.
Well, yes, I mean, yeah, okay, I agree.
Well, they're you know, it's
no,
just a natural process.
I'll tell you a story about Facts of Life, is that because I was so ridiculed as a kid, I feared other kids. It was like, oh no, another kid. And I found myself walking fast. People to this day, even with a titanium neck, say, oh my God, you walk fast. And I think that's a leftover from childhood. It's like, I want to get away, I want to get away. And it's unconscious. I don't even know that I'm doing it. And I remember I was in DC, I had been on Facts of Life for a year, and I was just, getting used to this kind of like, I went from being isolated to being mobbed. It was like a culture shock. It was like boom, boom. It's like, and I remember when I was in DC, and these kids were walking behind me, and again I went back to the old little J, and I started walking really fast, almost to a run, and they finally caught up to me at my hotel room door, totally out of breath. Jay, are you that girl from Facts of Life? And I said, yes. Well, why did you keep running away from us? We wanted your autograph. And I was stunned. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Of course, no problem. And I signed the autograph. It was like kids wanted to interact with me rather than not want. Like again, it went from one extreme to the other extreme. And it was very, I had to readjust my thinking. Stop going there psychologically.
Does anybody out there have a question for Geri?
Yes.
Yes, Kristen?
Is it hard having cerebral palsy?
Is it hard having cerebral palsy?
Is it hard having it? How do I answer that? The misconceptions and perceptions of people in society makes it harder. I've never had anything different. I was born with it. So I have nothing really to compare it to. So I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I was a little kid, I can remember begging my parents for a wheelchair. or braces on my legs, something. And they couldn't, why? You worked so hard to learn how to walk. You had physical therapy. We were so proud of you when you finally did it. Why would you want a wheelchair now at age 11? And I said, because then kids would stop making fun of me. It was like, and it didn't even dawn on me that the kids that I went to school with who were in wheelchairs, used wheelchairs or crutches or whatever, they were made fun of too. It was like, my attitude was, why bother to go through all this physical therapy and learn how to walk when you're going to be laughed at how you walk? And I thought that if I were in a chair, kids wouldn't laugh at me anymore. And it was an assumption,
Right.
you know. And years later, I would ask some of the friends that I grew up with, were you laughed at as a kid? Because, yeah, of course we were. And, but you didn't walk. Well, so what? What difference does that make? You still laughed at. So it was, yeah, I would say the most painful part of cerebral palsy or any disability is not having it, but how people treat you.
Before Deadwood, had you seen many Westerns? Did you have any particular favorites? And finally, did you work with David Milch in developing your character?
Well, I'll be honest with you. When he offered me, see, I'm 53 years old. I am the last of the baby boomer generation. And if I had done my homework and thought about Milch and where he came from and what kind of work he did, I wouldn't have thought like this. But when he offered me the role of Deadwood, I was thinking Gunsmoke and I was going to be Miss Kitty. I had no idea what I was getting into until I saw the first script, and I was like, whoa, wow, oh. And boy, this is a grown-up show. And I'm glad I did it. You know, he offered me such an incredible opportunity to even grow as an actress. And you know, Jewell was such a phenomenal character. And it's tragic that they canceled Deadwood the end of the third season because they were just developing Jewell. I mean, Jewell was coming to life, and I was looking so forward to the development in the fourth season and bringing her more into who she really was.
Okay. Now, more questions, please? Yes, sir.
Jewell, we loved you in Deadwood. There were a lot of rumors flying afterwards that they were going to make a movie, a full-length feature film, to tie everything together and to bring it to a close.
Well, you know, we were all set to go into filming the two movies, not this last September, but the September before. And unfortunately, change of hands. New head of HBO came in August and nixed the two movies for whatever reason. I do not know why. Everybody was disappointed, so incredibly disappointed. I know I was, you know, just for the opportunity to work with that wonderful cast and crew again. I would give anything for that opportunity. You know, we're hoping that maybe someday they will bring it back. HBO is going to have to get bombarded with a lot of threats. a lot of emails and the only thing that's going to make a difference is if it hurts the pocketbooks. And that's why the movies came about in the first place, because when Deadwood was canceled, most of the cast members, many of us, went on a campaign to save the show. We did radio, we did personal appearances, television, we did everything we could think of to get email, to get HBO to reverse their decision. And what happened was HBO was bombarded with emails saying that people will go, diehard Deadwood fans were going to stop their subscriptions to HBO unless they bought back Deadwood. So that's how the movies came about.
Sure. They always listen to their pocketbook. So if you really love it, get out there, email them, write them.
Yeah, email
They will
them every
listen to them.
day. Say, hey, what happened to the movies?
I want to thank you for joining us. At
My
House Builder,
pleasure.
Right?
Thank you.